everyone, it's nice to be back, and we're just getting ready to start the new season this year. And before we get going, we're going to have to do a couple of weeks of annual maintenance on the boat, and we've got something new to install. So we've just been to Ross-on-Wye to pick up something that I found on Facebook on Narrowboat Bits and Bobs, and it seemed to have got missed by other people, perhaps because it's something that's not being used much yet, but we've been wanting to change our stove for some time. I'm a bit over with burning. I've done it for over 30 years in various places, and I just don't want the particulates and the ash and all of that anymore. And it's becoming more difficult anyway, you know, as the years go on. We're being encouraged not to burn solid fuel so much. So we were thinking of converting to diesel, but it's quite expensive, and we would have had to run new pipes into the boat. And although it's probably better than a wood burning stove, it's not the total solution. So just by chance I found this, and it runs on bioethanol. It's a much more sustainable solution, and the amazing thing is you need no pipe work and you need no flue, so you suddenly freed up lots of room. So let me show you what it is. So this is a 1920s original French stove which has been converted to take bioethanol. Inside there's a chamber where the liquid goes. The flue's been cut off at the back. The ash pan has been halved, and it's had some weights put on the back to keep it in place. And it comes with this rod which slots into the hole there. And then that can open and close inside. So we've just arrived back at the boat, and it's quite late. It's about 9 o'clock at night. And I'm going to light the stove tonight, and I'm going to see what temperature it is to start with, and that's better, and then see how long it takes to get up to a good temperature, and then I can compare it with the bioethanol fire once we get that lit. So at the moment, the temperature, we've got one of these, I'll show you. So we've got one of these over-engineered things, and the indoor temperature at the moment is 6.2 degrees centigrade. The other temperature over there is in our battery cupboard. We like to keep an eye on the temperature because the batteries don't like to work under about 5 degrees. So I'm going to get the fire going and see what temperature I can get it up to and how long it takes. Cold chimney. So now a fire like this is always going to give out more heat than a bioethanol. In particular, we tend to burn these briquettes, and they burn really hot, and we always use kiln dried wood as well. But what I'm hoping to achieve is to be able to get a nice even temperature through the boat with the bioethanol of around, I'd be happy with 2021. This is a 5 kilowatt, and it very quickly gets too hot in here. We just don't need all the heat that it chucks out. So after it's been lit for about an hour, we have to open all the windows, which is good for ventilation, dries everything out, but it is more than we need. Right, 9:25. The thermometer is rising just because I'm here. It's up to 6.5, so it's creeping up. And I won't miss that. So after an hour we're at 18.8, so it's gone up 12 degrees in an hour so far. So here we are this morning. We're just letting the fire go out, and then we can move this one over and put the bioethanol in its place. Last night it took 90 minutes to get to 21 degrees, which is a nice temperature for the cabin. It took 2 briquettes and 4 logs to get it to that temperature. This morning I've relit it. It's 24.5 degrees now. It's far too hot. It's very drying on the skin, and we just don't need that much heat. So I'm not expecting the bioethanol to be able to keep up with it in terms of heat output, because this is 5 kilowatts and the bioethanol is, I think, around 3.5. But there's not going to be continually putting the wood in and taking the ash out. You just put the fuel in and let it burn for however long it takes to burn through a bottle of fuel. It's worked out very well for us because we're just about to go into dry dock for 2 weeks, and obviously in a dry dock we can't use our central heating because of the diesel fumes, and we can't light the stove because of the smoke. So the bioethanol is going to keep us toasty warm while we do our annual maintenance on the inside and the outside of the boats. Ooh. Oh my god, it looks tiny, doesn't it, compared to the other one? Teeny tiny. So pretty. Lovely. These tiles. We've just wedged it up into the corner for the moment because it's being dragged into dry dock tomorrow and we haven't secured it yet. We've just realised we don't need all this hearth anymore, so we might be able to get rid of those 2 slates there. Not sure the tiles fit anymore anyway, so I'm going to have to probably get something more in keeping with the stove, so we can reduce the size of all of that and give ourselves a weeny bit more room. It's so exciting. Well, we've had the stove in for a week now and we've been doing all sorts of experiments with it. But before I tell you how we got on with it, I thought I'd let you know what I found out about bioethanol. I'd done a fair bit of research before I bought it, but knowing I was going to do this vlog, I've had another look around as well so that I can find out all the basics to let you know. So I've got some notes here for you. The first thing is stoves. You can buy brand new bioethanol stoves. They're quite contemporary, they look really nice, but you can also convert, as far as I'm aware, any stove to bioethanol, and you buy a chamber. They seem to cost about 80, 90, £100. You can even buy a kit, but they come with some pretend logs and things like that, which is not really necessary. And it looks like it's fairly easy to transform a stove to bioethanol. You leave the fire bricks in, you take a bit out the bottom and you just drop the chamber in. This one has got some dimpled metal behind, which makes the flames dance really nicely. So you can do all of that. I think, you know, basic DIY skills to do that. I think this one is a 1 litre.
You can buy, I've seen 1.5 litres as well. And I guess that if you put a bigger chamber in and you're burning more fuel, then you would get more kilowatts out. I don't know. I only know what this one does, which is 1 litre. I rang the chap who did our last BSS and I asked him about the rules for this. And as far as he's aware, it's no different to an ordinary fire. You need airflow, you need a monitor. You don't have to worry about a hearth in front of it because there's no embers to come out. And I think you can even take the glass out of the front of your stove if you want, although I don't see why you would, but you can do if you want. They need no fuel, flue, so all of that space up there is freed up now. The fuel itself, I am using eco fuel, which seems to be a very high premium fuel. You need to have it around 96% alcohol. It's a denatured alcohol, and although you can get cheaper versions with less alcohol in, they're not going to burn so cleanly. So the point of a high alcohol one is that it burns clean and fast, and it can only ever be, or it can only ever come down to a certain price because of the taxes that the government puts onto fuel. So the cost of it depends on how many litres you buy. We are buying 48 litres, and that works out at £2.38 a litre. You can buy higher and higher quantities, but when you get to a certain point, like 96 litres, I think, the price doesn't really come down very much more. So 2.38 a litre. It burns for about 4.25 hours, so that works out at about 60p a litre. And looking around online, it looks like burning solid fuel is about 80p a litre, and 80p an hour. So when we burn briquettes, they work at about £1 each. So we would easily use one an hour. So it definitely seems to me to be cheaper than solid fuel. The fuel is a sustainable fuel. It's made from molasses, or eco-fuel make theirs from molasses, which is a byproduct of the sugar beet industry. So it's sustainable in that sense. How sustainable sugar beet itself is, I'm not really sure, but as they're always going to grow it and this is a byproduct, you can feel fairly guilt-free about that. I think they also produce bioethanol from corn and maize, animal feed, things like that. It's the sort of fermentation of the sugar that produces the bioethanol. The emissions produced are some water vapour, some carbon dioxide and heat. The carbon dioxide is about the equivalent of burning 2 candles. The water vapour just goes into the air. I haven't noticed any condensation on our windows. What I have noticed is that the air doesn't dry out as much as it does with a wood burning stove, so I'm not getting the dry skin that I always noticed with the wood burner. I was always shoving more moisturiser on when I burnt that. So that seems to be fine. It doesn't seem to be, anything untoward there. It's called low odour, so I was a bit worried about it smelling. And in fact, the only smell you get from it is right at the end of the burn when there's very little left in the chamber. So at that point, I just shut the chamber, ready to put some more fuel in, and that cuts any odour at all. Rest of the time, you can't tell. The fuel needs to be kept 3 metres away from the heat source, and ours is all in our gas locker as we don't have gas, so we have room out there. And we keep one in the cabin so that it's at room temperature when we light it. Using the stove, you get your bottle of fuel and you squeeze it into the chamber and fill it to the top, and then you just light it with a match and it just lights on top of the fuel. You get a sort of blue flame to start with, and then after about 10 minutes you get this really nice dancing yellow flame. If you use the fuel cold, you might get a pop when you light the fuel, which is why we keep one indoors. It's better to light it at room temperature, but it's not particularly scary. It's fine. It just goes poof and lights like that, so it's fine. The most important thing with them, the biggest safety thing, is not to refuel when it's still hot. So once the chamber has run out of fuel, you must let it cool down for about 15 minutes, and it cools down quite quickly. You can feel, so as soon as it's lukewarm and there's very little heat left in it, then you can fill it up again with fuel. So you do hear about accidents with bioethanol, and as far as I'm aware, looking around, every single time there's been an accident, it's because somebody has tried to refuel it while it's still really hot. And at the back of the chamber, there's a ceramic fibre, and that can still be lit for a little while after it's gone out. So if you're dumping fuel on top of a flame, it will combust. So you just have to be careful about refilling it. But the temperature of the cabin doesn't drop in 15 minutes, so it's quite easy to wait for that long before you light it again. So how have we got on with it? We decided to use it in exactly the same way as we used our wood burner, and that for us is lighting it for maybe an hour, hour and a half in the morning just to warm up, and then we let it go out for the rest of the day, and then we light it again at about 6 o'clock when we're starting to sit down and make dinner and so on. So we've noticed that when it's lit, the temperature goes up by about a degree every 15 minutes. So over an hour, it's about 4 degrees an hour. And the wood burning stove is quicker than that. So that's the difference. It does take longer to come up to temperature. So by the time, we light it just before dinner while we make dinner and sit down to eat it, and then we sit down in the salon after dinner, then it's at about 18 degrees and we let it go up to about 20, and that's hot enough for us. At that point, you can close the chamber down a little bit and just maintain the heat. So if we wanted it to be warmer earlier, then we would light it a bit earlier. We haven't really noticed any problems with it at all. It's doing exactly what we wanted it to do, which basically is just give us the heat without all the hassle of the ash and the logs. Today has been colder, so we decided to light it a bit earlier, and we also put our hurricane heater on, so we do have a backup system. We don't use it very much. It's a really good system, but it's noisy, and so we use it rarely. So today we put it on for about 20 minutes at the same time as we put the stove on. We got the cabin up warm nice and quickly, and now we've closed the fire down. We turned the heater off after about 20 minutes, and I'm going to see how long this bottle lasts for, because if I've pulled the cover over a little bit, then the fuel should burn for longer. So at the end of the video, I'll let you know how long we got out of this litre. So it's a bit later on, and I realised that I didn't tell you the most important thing, and that's the setup of our boat. It's quite a new boat, and it's spray foam insulated, and we have double glazed windows. So that's the caveat to all of this. I don't know how effective the stove like this would be on big old boats, which was older and had single glazing, etc. And also our stove's right in the middle of the boat, so the heat is sort of going like this. If it was down the end, then very possibly you wouldn't get very much heat at that end. It's difficult to know, but I thought it was important that I let you know that. The other thing is that with the cabin warm, we got 5 hours out of that litre, so that brings the price down a little bit more if you're running it for long periods of time. I don't think I've forgotten anything important. I hope I haven't, but please feel free to ask any questions if you're interested in the comments below. I'll happily answer whatever I can. And I'm going to go now, and I'll see you on the next video, which will be in dry dock. And that's it for now. Okay then, hope that was useful. Bye all. Right, I'm going to have another little look. $23. Time to take a jumper off.